After resupplying with an underwhelming selection and a final meal at a restaurant we'd frequented in town, we managed to yogi a ride from the gas station back to trail. As dark clouds covered the sky, moths hatched all around us, creating a flurry akin to watching a midsummer snowfall. After one short climb, we were going downhill the rest of the way to camp, and luckily we're in the safety of the trees.
Just heard some of the loudest thunder, not in my life, but it was quite loud. That one was quieter.
Thunder boomed before the downpour began, and with my rain jacket blocking half my view, I missed the turnoff for camp. With an extra mile under my belt, and just as the storm let up, I made it to the trailhead we were camping at, just 12.7 miles out of town. Over the fire that evening, we discovered we could cut this section by an entire day if we did a 35-mile road walk starting the next afternoon. A shortcut that cuts an entire day was too tempting, and to our own surprise, we decided to try the road. The first 12 miles before the road were beautiful. Surrounded by blooming wildflowers and rolling hills, we made our way quickly through the morning. After a brief bout with some tangled blowdowns, we were on pavement for the rest of the day. At lunch, some former CDT thru-hikers stopped and gave us trail magic. It was unexpected and a huge morale boost. The start of the potentially very boring 35 miles of pavement turned out to be kind of fun. It's amazing what a difference being surrounded by other hikers can make. There were probably 10 or 12 of us on the road that day, and leapfrogging with each other broke up the otherwise uniform scenery. The water sources along the road were unreliable, scarce, and even potentially alkaline in some cases. So we cameled up when we could, even from some rather swampy sources, and accepted water from the intermittent strangers who drove by.
Alright, so I am roughly 29 miles into my day today. I think we're going at least 35. We found out there's a road walk into Rawlins. It's like 35 miles long versus the trail, which is like, I don't remember, but it cuts 22 something miles.
With the goal of making it to a reservoir to camp, we hiked into the night and ended our 35-mile day watching thunderstorms in the distance. We only had 14 miles of road left to make our way into Rawlins, and we figured we could knock it out quickly. It started to rain, and after Switch took a ride from a kind stranger, I was persuaded to do the same. Feeling guilty though, I ended up reconnecting my steps after a meal in town. In the afternoon, we went to the local watering hole in the wall, and rounded out the evening with enough beers to make zeroing the next day practically necessary. Franzia had made friends with a local hairdresser, and I joined the girls for mullets in the morning, but quickly discovered I was not well enough to be there. Eventually, Josh was convinced to delay our foray into the heart of the basin just one more day. After a morning McDonald's run, it was time to continue our trek into the famed Great Divide Basin. The walk to our first water was long, hot, and very exposed, just as it would be for the next 120 plus miles. In the late afternoon, we were faced with a decision: follow the official CDT and risk a run-in with an armed and angry rancher who was apparently unaware hikers were indeed allowed to walk on the trail, or take an alternate and risk rampant mosquitoes. We opted for the latter and had some regrets when the largest mosquitoes I've ever seen emerged from the mud on both sides of the seemingly endless Forest Service road. They were hungrier than any I'd ever encountered, and DEET did little to slow them down.
I am being eaten alive by mosquitoes. It's a 60-mile water carry. It's super hot, and it's 6:30. It feels just as hot as it did when it was 2 p.m. The shade does not exist out here. Did I mention the mosquitoes? I literally don't know why anyone hikes the CDT. Don't know why I'm hiking the CDT. If I weren't so goddamn stubborn, I would have quit this trail a long time ago. My water is literally hot. It's not room temperature, it's hot. The winds are at 90 something miles. Almost, like 100 miles from where I am right now. 100 miles to go through the basin, and we'll be in the winds.
After a tough evening where, to be entirely dramatic, I thought I might die if the sun didn't set soon, we made it to a solar well where we set up camp with plans to leave early the next morning. We stopped for water in the afternoon at a reservoir, but the wind made even a large body of water and an otherwise extremely arid environment a somewhat miserable experience. The morning had dragged on and I felt sick, probably from the sun exposure. We made a habit of dipping our clothes in water troughs to combat the heat and made it to our final water source of the day with some daylight to spare. We continued on after cooking dinner, hopeful of reaching an actual tree to camp under. The landscape of the basin was vast in a way that I'd never experienced before. You could look forever in every direction just to see more of the same. It was disorienting in its uniformity and terrifying in its enormity. We went to bed planning to do a 24-hour challenge. My main motivation being the escape of this strange, hot place.
Okay, we are starting 24-hour challenge.
Tempting.
And that means we probably won't see each other today. So this is it. It's about 7 a.m. We'll start here shortly, and
7:24.
okay, it's about 7 a.m. And we're in the Great Divide Basin. We've got 63 miles to lander. We're gonna see how far we can go. Okay, it is mile 1, hour 1 of the 24-hour challenge, and I am feeling pretty good. My feet were aching so much that they kept me up last night for a little while, so we'll see how this pans out, but so far, feeling pretty good. It might be really hot today though. It's gonna be like 88 is the high, but not cloudy. 14 mile per hour winds, hopefully those help. We'll see.
The basin grew on me despite my resolution to escape it. The wild horses and pronghorns and sagebrush, as far as you can see, do have an interesting sort of charm. It was unlike anywhere I've ever been before, and despite it being wholly overwhelming, I could still find appreciation for the endless and often unforgiving, shadeless landscape.
It's hour 2 of my 24-hour challenge, and I'm about 6.2 miles in, so made pretty good pace this last hour. We'll probably slow down a bit on this third hour because we've got water in 2.5. But that's all right. And that the breeze is nice, keeping us cool for now. Hopefully that continues into the afternoon. Yesterday afternoon was freaking brutal. I cried. It was so miserable. So if that happens, I'm just gonna take a break. Like, I'm not that dedicated to this, like to the point where I'd put myself in danger. So that's that. The basin's still just wide open, nothing space. Sitting back there. Basically just sagebrush and cows for as far as you can see. I am 6 hours into my 24-hour challenge. Still 17.5 miles, so still making pretty good time. My feet are starting to hurt. I'm sure that's only going to get worse. I'm going to take a lunch break at this water cache in like 4 miles. It's like 1:30 right now. Yeah, and then hopefully keep that to like 30 minutes and keep going. I can already tell this is gonna be hard. Felt okay for the first part of the day, but it's starting to feel tough. It's also really hot right now. This is always the hardest part of the day for me, so maybe that's just what's happening, so we'll see. I am about 9 hours in now, and almost 23 miles. So we just took like an hour-long lunch. I felt like really not good before lunch. The heat of the day really gets to me, and I've also been having some GI issues, so yeah, took a break until I felt better, and now we're back at it, and I feel really good. My feet feel better even. It's about exactly halfway time-wise, and I'm halfway to my long goal, but there's no way this pace is sustainable. So I don't think that's, it's 1:43, so, no, it's 12:43. So we're like 17 hours in and 42-ish miles. 42.3. My feet really hurt, and I'm still nauseous. It's like 3:50 a.m. and I'm at like 49.2 or 3 or something. I'm calling it quits at 50. I'm so nauseous. And whew, it's just not worth it to be miserable for any longer.
After 50 miles and nearly losing the little food I'd managed to stomach that day, I pitched my tent on the side of a dirt road, hopeful that no cars would pass before I broke camp in the morning. With 13.5 more miles left to town, I'd never been more miserable. The sun was blazing by 8 a.m. and my hips were aching from the day before. I shuffled my way into South Pass City, and after almost accidentally using a historically preserved outhouse, attempted a shortcut to the road into Lander, which only made the day worse. After maneuvering through 3 barbed wire fences and almost definitely trespassing, I made it to the highway and nearly cried when someone pulled over to take me into Lander. In Lander, we took a zero to recover from the brutality of the basin and get ready for one of my most anticipated sections of trail, the Wind River Range.